Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
So again, thank you for joining our session today, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Chris. Chris is the Senior Director of Business Consulting and Advisory Services for GP Strategies, has over 25 years of experience in providing organizational effectiveness, solutions to Fortune 500 companies deploying complex business initiatives. His work focuses on helping clients connect strategy and execution to unleash the full potential of their organization while delivering high quality client service and helping deliver success for client strategies. We have a great session planned today. And with that, Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Kim, and welcome everybody. I know that I have big shoes to fill with Dr. Cheryl, as I like to call her, being out today, but suffice to say that I slept at a Holiday Inn last night, so I'm feeling confident that I can step up to the challenge here. Welcome to and good morning to those here in the US. Good afternoon to those who are over in the UK. Thank you, as Kim said, for joining us today, and we're looking forward to having this conversation, getting some good dialogue, and answering questions along the way. Before we get started, though, I really want to just kind of get a sense of those of you out there, what it is that your experience is in organizational design, right? Whether you're currently engaged in it, have you done an org design effort in the past? Are you engaged in one now? Is something coming up? Or you've never really had to do it, but you think it's something worth getting to know. So go ahead. Kim has a poll up. You can see the questions there. Feel free to pick your area. It's always nice just to get an understanding of people's experience and frame of mind as we begin this conversation, because as we'll talk about here, there is a lot of differences between what people believe org design is and what it really can and should be. So it looks like most everybody has responded at this point. Great. We're kind of evenly divided across all of the four areas that we've got listed in the poll there. So that's good. We'll use that as a way to kind of guide the conversation as we continue to move on. You can kind of see the results that we've got here. Find yourself in there somewhere, and we'll continue to move forward. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So here's the plan. First, we're going to talk about what we believe organization design really is, and at the same time, what we believe it's not, and sort of a common perception that we've bumped into within the industry as we're working with folks around this. We'll highlight times, indicators, right, situations within the business that might be telling you, hey, it's time for us to take a look at the organizational structure, and as we'll talk about, the organizational system of performance. And then we'll lay out sort of the foundations for how you go about conducting an effective org design. And then some of the considerations that should be taken into account as you move to begin implementing it. And more importantly, we're not going to talk about all the steps, but more importantly, the role that change management plays in enabling the adoption of the new design as you begin to roll it out, and the point at which that should be considered in the initiative overall. So with that said, let's start with this question. And if you don't mind, just in the chat, type what you think what this means to you when you hear the term either organization design or organizational design, right? What is it? What does that mean to you? And generally, how do you think about it? So if you just in the chat, go ahead and start typing in some thoughts there that you may have around that. Some people, what we bump into, it's about the structure. It's about the people within the organization. It's about the boxes that they may go into. What else is it for you? Oh, good, Kathy. Or structuring the org to align with goals. Erwin, alignment, yes, yes. How do you structure the organization based on the goals? Good. Structures and roles and processes associated with it. Yep, that's good. I like how the answers that are coming through here are about connectedness, and I'm seeing the interrelation between roles, jobs, goals. We'll call those strategy as we move forward here, right? A system for governing. That's great. So let's just dive into this at this point. You can feel free to continue to add to the chat as you like. And what we're going to talk about now is this is how we think about it, right? We believe, well, what I'm really happy that we didn't see here is just names in a box on an org chart. I think you'd be surprised how often when folks hear the term organization design, that's what they think about. They think about the people in their organization, what jobs are they in right now? How do we rearrange those jobs in an org chart? And then where do we put those names again when it comes through? So I'm really happy that we didn't see that in the answers that we're given. But the way we think about this, and you can see this in the graphic that's up here, is that really organization design is about creating a system of high performance where all of these elements work together, right, to align and deliver on the strategy that is set up for the organization. Whether, and someone put it in here, right, governing groups of individuals either at a department or a division or an enterprise level. And that is true. This can all be segmented and structured appropriately for the level of the organization you're discussing. Each element in here, whether it's structure, process, people, or the talent, right, the metrics, all of those things work together. And for an organization designed to be successful, they have to be aligned in a way that enables you to deliver the organizational capabilities to support achieving the strategy that is set out for the organization, right? We call that a system of performance. And that's what organizational design is really tapered towards. It's not about the org chart. It's about building this system that creates a high-performing organization. And it's a balancing act to keep that aligned, right? Disruptions in the marketplace, disruptions within the organization, things external to the company, internal to the company, all have an impact and an effect on these individual factors for this system of performance. And it really is a constant balancing act to make sure that these stay aligned in order to deliver on the strategy that exists for your organization. So now that we're thinking about it in terms of that system of performance, we want to take a quick poll here that starts to lay the foundation of when do you know and when should you conduct an organization design effort or initiative within your company or your department and your division. So Kim, I think we've got another poll here, if you don't mind putting that up here. And so here are the things, right? What are the signs that you key in on? What are the indicators that give you that make the decision for you that we've got to do something, right? So you can answer the poll here. If you've got some other things that you look at that we don't have captured in this poll, by all means, put them in the chat and we'll take a look at those as well. So, things like performance failures. Has the company taken a decidedly different approach to the strategy that's out there? Do you think that there are things that are limiting the structure? And as this unfolds, right, we're certainly seeing all of the combination of all of this, and we're getting close to having everybody answer the poll. Actually, I think we do have everybody who's answered. So and in the chat, external factors such as competition. Yep, Karen, that's a great point, right? Competition in the marketplace. We're going to go ahead and end that poll. Competition in the marketplace really kind of drives perhaps the strategy that the organization may choose to implement and pursue. So got it. I'm going to end the poll now, and we're going to start talking about the idea of when considering org design makes sense. In the poll, as you saw, a good portion of everybody said, look, all of these things are indicators that drive the need or the requirement to take a look at the organizational design. And you would all be right. That's certainly how we think about it. Other things in the chat, Kathy, you mentioned mergers and acquisitions. Absolutely, those are things as well. Fundamentally, though, there really are three indicators that kind of alert you to the need to take a look at the design of your organization. The first is really around performance failures, right? Within an organization, and if you think about all of those factors, right? Process, structure, talent, metrics, capabilities, the way they all come together. If things in there are misaligned, you're really going to start to see performance failures throughout the organization, right? They manifest that way. Things like decision-making isn't happening at the pace that you're looking for because there are territorial battles. Clarity around decision-making authority isn't clear. We aren't able to react fast enough within the organization to respond to disruptions that come in and affect our ability to deliver the results that we're looking for, right? Maybe resources are allocated in the wrong places and therefore can't get to the work that needs to be done. There's internal competition, right? And I kind of talked about this just a moment ago around territorialism. They're fighting for their own patch of business or success within the organization. And that may show up and manifest as customer focused issues, right? Things that are impacting the customer experience for you. And certainly there can be leaks and drains on the internal budget, right? Things like that really show up as performance failures in the organization. And when you see those, that's a time to begin thinking about this. The second is if you have a change in strategy, right? We talked about this, Karen pointed it, external factors such as competition. If competition is becoming considerably more demanding or it's changing market share for the organization, typically or companies or departments or divisions, they'll change their approach, they'll change their goal, they'll change their strategy. Maybe it's complete changes in the operating model or the business model, right? We're moving to vertical integration. We want to go after new market segments. We want to go after new product lines or geographic regions, right? Going after new emerging markets and whatnot. Things that happen externally that impact the strategy are times to think about new organizational design factors. And then the last one really is around structure. And this one is a little bit more challenging to kind of understand or recognize when structure is playing an issue, right? Sometimes when you have legacy business units or functions within the organization, maybe through a merger or an acquisition that wasn't integrated properly, and therefore you're seeing issues in the way that you can scale for market demand or customer demand. Maybe you're trying to innovate in new product segments, and that part of the organization doesn't have access to the right resources. It doesn't have access to the right decision-making, right? And they can't innovate in a manner that they're looking for. These are all things to consider about when an organizational design effort might make sense. So performance failures, changes in the strategy, and limiting structures are areas to keep an eye out for to see how we might make changes to what's happening. And the way you see it is kind of in those bullets that are there, but oftentimes it shows up as confusion in the organization. It shows up as we're not clear on what our priorities are and what we're going after. There's a lot of disruptive tension within the organization because there's lack of clarity and lack of direction. Maybe there's a lot of rework or waste because quality is impacted. Thing that's on a lot of people's minds right now is whether or not employees have the right skills either to address the new direction or to function and operate properly within the roles that they currently have. So as you think about what folks have listed in the chat here, right, it seems to me that you're all thinking about the same things here, that these are the areas that probably resonate with you around, yep, I'm seeing this, I'm feeling this, we need to do something about it. So let's start talking about what are the foundations for an effective organization design, right? This is kind of, we'll put up the next slide here. We'll kind of talk about an approach, a three-phased approach. And we're not going to go into detail in all of them, but we're going to kind of set the stage for how to think about this and how to begin tackling it, and really what should happen first when you start doing it. So we shared the model of our system of performance, right? The balancing act that happens. And that is a framework that when organizations begin to think about org design, we recommend using that framework as a way to walk your leaders and your teams through an understanding of what you're trying to address, and then to think about this three-phased approach as a way to guide them on the process and how to begin to lay a solid foundation for what we like to call as a quality solution for this, right? So first and foremost in here is the first phase. And that's around strategic alignment, right? Are we clear on the problem that needs to be solved? If you think back to those indicators that we just talked about, right? The times where something is manifesting in the organization that tells us we need to do something. Got it. Are we all clear on this? And that's what this first phase is intended to drive to. What is it we need to solve? What are the capabilities that we need to be able to deliver? Where are our gaps that we have? And it's not necessarily around people, but around organizational capabilities. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And how do we think those should be addressed, right? This particular phase sets the stage. When you answer these questions, it sets the stage and the foundation for how the work should be organized, what type of operating model and structure for your business that should be established to help drive that, the various functional roles that can exist, and perhaps it even starts to dig into what are the tools and the systems that are needed in order to enable this. Now, what you'll notice is in this first phase, we haven't even begun to think about an organizational chart, right? We're not thinking about the people in the organization. We're not thinking about those names in boxes or even how those boxes get arranged. All of that happens in phase two. What we are really focused on here is just making sure we're clear on the problem and we know what we're trying to drive to, and structurally the type of operating model that we want to put in place. Once we have that, moving into phase two is the next logical step. And within phase two, this is where we begin to balance the rest of those elements that I just talked about that will help drive the organizational performance, right? So how do we structure work processes? What's the actual organization design, right? Now we're talking about the chart, we're talking about the roles associated with it. We're talking about how the workflow progresses and how it flows, the specific roles that are needed. And we get the leaders aligned to all of this so that we can be very clear about what the critical skills that are needed to deliver on those roles, to make sure the work processes flow, make sure decision-making is happening the way it's supposed to be. Then comes the final staffing, right? It's natural when you start thinking about organization design to just jump right into the structure. We're humans. We have relationships with people in the organization. We are very cognizant that this oftentimes has an impact on people's jobs and their roles. And the compassionate approach is to think about the people, the individuals when you're doing this. But right now is the time, in order to lay this effective foundation, is to not think about them at this time. It's to think about what is the structure, what are the roles, and what are the capabilities that are needed, not necessarily the people. We'll get to that later. So let's talk about what we mean by the strategy and the capabilities, right? In the middle there, and this is, this is intentional that it sits in the middle. But once you have decided, based on the factors that you've seen, that you've decided an organizational design initiative is relevant and appropriate right now, we believe strongly that the first thing to do is to take a look at the strategy. It doesn't matter if the thing that caused you to take a look at this is a performance failure, or you believe you've got a limiting structure and you're not necessarily sure if you've shifted the strategy. It is important to go back and first start with the strategy to see, are there any impacts on this? Should we be adjusting, right? Because the strategy is intended to help you focus on how you can grow and compete in your market. The second thing to look at are what we call the organizational capabilities. Now, this is not individuals. These aren't skills. These aren't the things that sit and you train people in. It's organizationally, what is it that you need to be able to do that will help you outshine the competition now and in the future? How does this differentiate your organization in the marketplace? Those are the organizational capabilities, right? Once you have those kind of defined, that's when you have the ability to start focusing in on the rest of the strategy. Now, what we're gonna talk about here is, if you think about the difference between vision, strategy, and tactics, this is kind of a high level view of, right? The vision is the why. Why is it that our organization does what we do? It can be aspirational. Typically, it's very large scale, and it doesn't necessarily have a timeline for you. Strategy is about the what. What is it we're trying to accomplish? And there are things that go into this. While it has a horizon, it's generally not as long as a vision horizon, right? This is about the next year, maybe the next 2 years. It could be a 5-year strategy. But settling on that is the important piece, because it influences everything else in this process. It sets the direction. And so taking a look at that to see if it's changed is going to determine if the organizational capabilities are different and are required, right? It settles on what's our objective, who are we here to serve, what value will we offer, and how will we win. The tactics behind that, that's what a lot of people go to first, is how are we going to do this? It becomes very granular, and it becomes something that's easy to wrap action around, right? But first thing, settle on the strategy. And once you have the questions to these that are clear, then you can move on. But if you're struggling to answer these questions, right, come back to this framework here and think about it from the vision on down to the strategy and the tactics to really hone in on what your strategy should be. Okay. So Kim, I think it's another poll time here. This poll is about what role has strategy played in the org design efforts you've been a part of, right? So has it been a significant factor? Is it something that, we thought about it a little bit, but generally it's only played a minor role, or yeah, no, we haven't thought about strategy as we've done it. I don't think that's an answer that people will select because no one talked about org design as a reshuffling of boxes. And maybe you just don't know, right? Maybe in your experience, organization design has happened elsewhere, and you just haven't been a part of what goes into thinking about it. So, okay, we're seeing, a fairly even split between, hey, strategy is central, it's a significant role, and those that say, I'm not sure. And a little bit in between about somewhat minor. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the poll and see, we'll share the results there just so you can see it. I think that's expected. That's pretty consistent with what we've experienced in working with folks out there on the marketplace, is that there's a real even balance between those that focus in on the strategy first and those that just are not quite aware yet because they may not have been a part of it. So I want to give an example here. I'm going to stop the poll. I want to kind of take you through an example because understanding strategy, I think people get that, right? Understanding how strategy compares to vision and tactics, people get that. The area that tends to be a little bit more ambiguous and harder or more challenging, not harder, but more challenging for organizations to really settle in on, but is critical as part of laying a foundation for successful org design, is understanding the role that organizational capabilities play in your design efforts, right? So we talked about, I gave you a quick definition of organizational capability. You can see it here. It's what organizational capabilities are is, well, before I give you our perspective, in the chat, tell me what you think organizational capabilities are. What does that represent? What does that mean to you in terms of your business, your function, your division, your experience? And then we'll take that and we'll talk about what we mean by organizational capabilities and how it all connects. So feel free to put in the chat what you have in mind for that. And think about also how often, a lot of people or half the folks said, yep, we use strategy. That's central to how we conduct our org design efforts. What about organizational capabilities? Is that something that you take into account and think through? So let me just go ahead and keep on with this. You can continue to put stuff in the chat as we go through, but organizational capabilities really is the manner in which, or the things that have to be done for your organization to successfully deliver on the strategy, right? So let's think about an example here, because this is where I think it's easier to make connections to what we mean by this. Let's say that there's a company out there, and the company is looking to expand distribution of their product into 5 new market segments out there, right? So that's the strategy. We want to grab market share. We want to move into these new markets, and we've got to be able to extend into that. Well, an organizational capability that might be selected and chosen as being critical to deliver on that strategy could be market access and development, right? And the way you might talk about that or ask about that and kind of dig in and understand it is, how effective are we today at doing this, right? Do we effectively go into new markets? Do we have an effective way, an efficient way, a standard way of developing new markets out there? and what are the biggest drivers of change that are going to either enable us to develop this capability or serve as a barrier for us to develop this capability, right? Do we need some specialization? Do we have to be able to coordinate across our geographies better? Is this enough of an important thing that it requires special management attention as we progress with this? So, another area, as I said, their strategy is expanding into new markets. Maybe it's also that as part of that, they need to bring new products to bear. Okay. And so an organizational capability here might be new product development and commercialization. Perhaps this is a new area for them, for the company. Perhaps they've decided that, no, we've been remiss or slow to bring new products out because we don't have the ability for product portfolio management. We don't do well at managing this. We don't do well at developing it. And we haven't done really well at commercializing that. So we've got to build a capability around that. David, I like how you're putting in there strengths, right? Those all impact it, and how are we open to thinking about new ideas and business ventures? Yeah, those are all things that can be considered as organizational capabilities here. The way to continue to think about this is achieving the business strategy. What do we have to be able to do better than the competition? Okay, so let's keep moving on. I want to start talking about the notion of implementing the organizational design. So as we've laid through this, we've aligned on what it is we're trying to solve. We're thinking about the strategy and making sure that either that's still appropriate or we've got to tweak it. And now we've got to be sure about the organizational capabilities that are needed to deliver on it. And we're going to begin to make choices around the structure that can support that. It's important for us to start thinking about, when you look at that process foundation, right? Implementing was phase 3. It was all the way to the right in our process. But I would say that, and this is what we believe, that it is important to begin thinking about change management and effective change management earlier in the process, which is why I'm talking about this now, right? In reality, the moment you start thinking about a new org design effort to support that solid foundation, you need to begin thinking about change management as well. And this is how we think about this. Everybody, I'm confident that when you follow the process of org design, you're going to build a quality solution, right? That's something that's going to be meaningful. It's going to set the right capabilities for the org in motion. You're going to build a structure around that enables those capabilities to be deployed. You're going to build processes and workflows that enable that efficiently, and you're going to develop talent that can support that and put them in the right roles that are needed. The challenge that we often overlook is making sure that the organization has been enabled for quality adoption of this solution. And so together, we say a quality solution plus quality adoption is what helps an organization realize the business results. And that means that you've got to be thinking about change management early on, because people transform, not companies, right? We often say we have a transformation, the company's transforming. The fact of the matter is that companies don't transform. It's the people inside the company that are the ones that transform, change, display, demonstrate, and apply different behaviors and skills and whatnot, all centered around and designed to support that organizational system performance. So that's an important thing, right? Change management has to start at the very beginning. When you see up on the top there in the gray are those phases that we discussed, and all the way over on the right there is where you see implementation. But the fact of the matter is that if you believe the chevrons down below sort of reflect that change journey, they really start all the way back in phase 1 around how you're planning and how you're preparing for the change that's going to happen. So I know we're getting close to our time here, and I wanna kind of leave you with these thoughts. And as we said, right, the goal of today wasn't to give you all the critical elements of change management, but to focus on the key things that help you set a solid foundation. There are 4 things here that, if you remember nothing else from today's conversation, think about this. First, organizational design should always be driven by strategy first, capability second, and that's it. Start there. Now, you don't have to spend a ton of time in it unless you discover that your strategy is no longer appropriately defined or focused. But you do have to begin there, because anything else is not going to help the company achieve what it's trying to achieve. The second thing is, org design requires a holistic systems thinking to be successful, right? That's why we have that framework around the organizational system of performance. A true design effort, like we said, is a balancing act. To achieve a high-performing organization is a balancing act between all those factors. And making sure that you address each one of them is important, because decisions in the capabilities affect the structure. Decisions about the structure affect the roles and the work process. Decisions about the work process affect the talent and the skills that are needed. Decisions about all of that impact how you're going to measure for success. Third, I think this one is on the top of everybody's mind right now, which is design for the future. Don't think about what's happening right now. Think about where the organization needs to go, and how this design, can be future-proofed. I'll use that word or that phrase, can be future-proofed over the next period of time, whether it's the horizon for your strategy, but think about it in the future. And the last piece here is that org design is the foundation of a business, and don't shortcut it, right? We said this earlier, that a high-performing organization, delivering a high-performing organization, is a balancing act between all of those factors around an organizational system of performance. And making sure your design aligns all of that consistently towards delivering those organizational capabilities and delivering on the strategy, that's the thing that's critical and important for you to do. Don't shortcut it. So I guess we have time, Kim, for questions.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So we have a few questions that came through, and we have a few minutes to ask them. So if you do have any that you would like to get in there, I ask you to do it now. But first there was a comment from Kathy Kincaid that I thought I want to make sure that you saw, that came through, where it talks about OCM needs to be a shift from training to performance and design solutions. I thought that was pretty.
Yeah. A lot of times, that's a great point, Kathy, right? A lot of times people believe that change management is a combination of training and communication. And while those are critical elements, the fact of the matter is there's so much more that's involved with that has to happen earlier, right? Making sure you've got active and engaged sponsors, making sure that people understand their role in the change and why it's important, making sure you've got a plan to address the resistance that's going to happen, because it undoubtedly will happen, and making sure that they are supported through that process. So starting it early allows you to be preventative, proactive, and then responsive through the process about how you address that adoption. Great point, Kathy. Thank you.
Great. There's a question here that talks about core capabilities, and how does a core capability differ from a regular capability?
So I guess I'm gonna draw the inference that when you say core capability, you're talking about the organization capabilities that we discussed, as compared to capabilities that individuals possess, right? So if you go back to the example, and let's say that product innovation and commercialization is is the organizational. It's the core capability that the company has to be able to do. If you were to say, okay, what do we need to do at the individual level to deliver on that? What you may then define are individual skills and capabilities around project management, product portfolio management, right? Business acumen and financial acumen to understand how to take a look at data around certain market areas so that you can make decisions about commercialization and so forth. Those individual skills help the organization deliver on the organizational capabilities.
Great. Conscious of time, Chris, do you want to move the slides over to your contact information just in case you don't get to answer all of the questions? They can reach out to you directly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If anybody has follow-ons, feel free to reach out.
There you go. So just one last question as we finish this 45-minute webinar. How do you help influence organizational design decision makers to consider best practices like what was shared today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. What we have found to be helpful is I would focus on two things from an awareness perspective. The first thing is getting whoever these decision makers are in your organization to understand that concept of the system of organizational performance, right? How all those factors play together to deliver what you're trying to do. Because until you have that mindset embedded in your leadership team and your executive team, they will often think about this from an expediency perspective. How quickly can we shift the org chart to get people to where we want them? The second piece is that around understanding those three indicators that say, here's where we've got to do something, right? These are, whether it's a performance failure, whether it's an intentional shift of strategy, or you can point to limitations in growth because the structure isn't set up the right way. We found if you anchor on those two elements to start, then that will really get them thinking about this from a best practice perspective. Great.
Perfect. Chris, I want to thank you for stepping in for Cheryl. You did a wonderful job. She would be so proud of you. And also for the great discussion. I want to thank everybody joining us for your time and attention. At the end of the session, we do ask that you take a minute just to fill out our survey because we always appreciate your feedback to make us better. So we do hope that you'll join us again for another one of our upcoming webinars. Be sure to visit GP Strategies website for all of our future sessions. And I wish everyone on the call a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you all again.
Thank you, everybody.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.